My name is Daniel. I'm 38, a software engineer turned startup founder. And until last year, I thought I had everything I ever wanted: a growing business, a tight circle of lifelong friends, and a beautiful, intelligent wife, Emily. We'd been married for 8 years, together for nearly 11. And from the outside, people often told us we were goals. Emily is the kind of woman who fills up a room the second she walks in. Confident, magnetic, and articulate. She worked in public relations for a major tech firm, often the face of their big campaigns. Her job kept her busy, but we always made time for each other, or at least I thought we did. We had no children, not by choice but by circumstance. After 2 years of trying and a few painful miscarriages, we stopped pushing. We poured ourselves into our careers instead, taking lavish vacations, hosting dinner parties, and renovating our home in the suburbs of Seattle. Among our inner circle, 2 people stood out: my best friend since high school, Matt, and Emily's younger sister, Rachel, who often crashed at our place during grad school. Matt had always been the brother I never had. He was there when I proposed, stood beside me at our wedding, and even invested in my company's seed round. I trusted him with everything, and that was my first mistake. The first red flag was subtle. Emily started sleeping with her phone under her pillow. She never used to care. We'd watch shows together, scroll through memes, laugh about the idiocy of Twitter together. But suddenly her phone was off limits. When I asked, she brushed it off. Just work stuff. You know how paranoid legal is getting with leaks lately. Fair enough. But then came the late nights. Client meetings, crisis communications, traffic was hell. I understood. Her job was demanding. But it became a pattern. Once I woke up at 2 a.m. and she wasn't home yet. She claimed she fell asleep at a coworker's house after too many drinks. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. I even mentioned it to Matt over beers one Friday night. He chuckled and said, "Man, Emily's always been intense about work. Don't get in your head. She adores you." And that was the second lie I swallowed. My friends told me I was being paranoid. Even Rachel said, "Em's just under pressure. Don't make it something it's not." So I buried my doubt, for a while, until something happened I couldn't ignore. It was during a company retreat to Lake Chelan, a 3-day offsite with my startup team and a few close investors. Matt was one of them. Emily usually skipped these events. She hated founder cults, as she called them, but this time, she agreed to come, said she needed the break. Everything felt off. She barely acknowledged me during the first evening mixer, glued to her phone or deep in conversation with Matt. When I finally cornered her to ask if something was wrong, she smiled too wide and said, "You're imagining things. Just let me relax, okay?" The second night was a bonfire by the lake. Beer, s'mores, startup gossip, and Spotify classics. At around midnight, I headed back to the main lodge to grab my jacket and stumbled, literally, upon the truth. I took a shortcut past the private dock and saw movement. 2 people, kissing. At first, I thought it was some of the junior staff sneaking off, but as I got closer, the porch light flickered on, and I saw them, Emily and Matt, her hands in his hair, his arms around her waist, locked together like it was the most natural thing in the world. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. I just stood there, watching, frozen. Eventually, Matt saw me. His expression went from passion to panic. He pushed her away like a teenager caught by a parent. Emily turned around, and I will never forget the look on her face. Not guilt, not shame, just irritation. Like I had interrupted something. They didn't try to explain. They didn't beg or cry. Emily said only one thing. "We should talk tomorrow." Tomorrow. Like I had walked in on a meeting. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't go back to the bonfire either. I walked for hours. Through the trees, up the slope behind the cabins, into the cold night air, trying to silence the screaming in my head. The humiliation, the betrayal. It wrapped around my ribs like a vice. I wanted to vomit. I wanted to punch something. I wanted to wake up, but I didn't. The next morning, I packed. Emily never came to the room. Matt didn't knock. I drove back to Seattle alone. No music, no podcasts, just the sound of tires on wet asphalt and the weight of everything crashing in on me. I knew I needed proof, not for court, not even for friends, for myself. Because a part of me still wanted to believe I had misread something, that I'd hallucinated the whole damn thing. So I started digging. First, I bought a burner phone and synced it with the spare Apple ID I knew Emily hadn't used since college. She was always tech-savvy, but not invincible. I guessed the password right on the second try, her childhood dog's name, and our wedding anniversary. Within minutes, I had access to her iCloud backups. The texts were there. Not all of them, she was careful, but enough. Messages like, "When are we going to stop hiding? He'll never see it coming. Last night was incredible. I can still taste you." She'd rename Matt in her contacts as Marie Work. Clever, but not clever enough. I screenshotted everything. Dates, locations. Even the nude she sent with the caption, "Wish you were here instead." It was taken in our bedroom. Our bed. Then came the email account. A second Gmail address I didn't recognize at first, but a forgotten autofill in our shared browser gave it away. Hidden under that account were receipts, hotel bookings, Uber rides to random condos, even a canceled reservation at a fancy downtown restaurant, booked under a fake name on our anniversary. Every discovery was a punch to the gut, but I kept going. I installed a small GPS tracker in her car, legal in Washington state if you own the vehicle, and I did. It confirmed what I feared. Twice a week, like clockwork, she'd park near Matt's condo downtown, late at night, leave 4-5 hours later. But the real break came from someone I never expected, Rachel. She showed up at my place 2 weeks later, visibly shaken. She looked me in the eyes and said, "I didn't know how to tell you. I thought maybe you already knew. But I walked in on them, a year ago. A year." She had come over to Emily's place to borrow a dress and caught them in the act. Matt had begged her not to tell me. Emily had said it was a mistake, a one-time thing. Rachel believed them for a while, but she couldn't sleep at night anymore. She handed me a flash drive, photos. From that night. "I'm sorry, Daniel," she whispered, and then she cried. I think she expected me to scream or throw something. But I just nodded. My voice, when I spoke, sounded like it belonged to someone else. "Thank you." I hired a lawyer the next morning. Not just a lawyer. Natalie Green. Sharp, tactical, ice-veined with a velvet tongue. She came highly recommended by a friend who'd gone through a similar hell. Her first words after hearing the full story were, "She's not just unfaithful, she's strategic. You need to assume this was premeditated." We had a prenup. Emily hadn't wanted one, but I did, given my startup equity. She signed it reluctantly. There was a clause I'd nearly removed but hadn't. A fidelity clause. A quiet paragraph stating that any act of proven infidelity voided claims to marital assets. It had been symbolic at the time. She had laughed when she saw it. "What, you think I'm going to run off with your best man?" Turns out, she didn't run. She seduced him instead. When we served her the divorce papers, Emily acted shocked, as if I had betrayed her. She tried to meet with me alone, but I declined. Everything went through Natalie now. Emily got a lawyer, not a bad one, but not Natalie. Her team tried to spin it. Emotional neglect, marital distance, unintended consequences of a busy dual career marriage. Classic misdirection, but Natalie wasn't just good. She was ruthless. She compiled every shred of evidence. The texts, emails, GPS logs, photos, Rachel's testimony. She even subpoenaed Matt for a deposition. He refused to show. That didn't matter. We had enough. In mediation, Emily tried to negotiate. "Let's not make this ugly," she said, looking right at me. I didn't speak. Natalie did. "If Ms. Green would like to avoid court, she'll waive any claim to Mr. Carter's business, property, and accounts. In accordance with Section 9B of the prenuptial agreement, she is entitled to nothing." Emily's expression didn't falter, but her voice cracked. "That clause is unenforceable?" Natalie smiled. "It is, unless there is evidence of infidelity, which we have, in spades." It was over in 42 minutes. The judgment was clean and cold. Emily left with nothing. No house, no shares, no car. The condo was mine before the marriage. The business, now valued at 8 figures, remained untouched. The car, titled in my name. She had to return it. The only thing she kept was her own personal savings and the guilt she could no longer escape. Word got out quickly. Matt was dropped from several contracts after whispers of ethical misconduct spread through the grapevine. Investors didn't like liars. One even pulled funding from a new venture he'd launched. Rachel stopped talking to her sister. My parents, who had always loved Emily, stopped returning her calls. She was alone. A month later, I received a letter, handwritten, from Emily. I'm sorry, not for getting caught, but for what I became, for not stopping it, for breaking you. I know you'll never forgive me, and I won't ask. Just know that it wasn't about love. I was lost, and he made me feel powerful. But it was all a lie. I lost everything real for something cheap. I didn't write back. Instead, I folded the letter, put it in a drawer, and moved forward. I rebuilt myself, took time off, traveled alone for the first time in years, reconnected with people I'd drifted from. Therapy helped, so did the silence. 6 months later, my company got acquired. I moved into a new place overlooking the water. It was quiet, minimalist, mine. Matt tried to reach out once. An email titled, "Can we talk?" I never opened it. I never needed to. Some betrayals don't deserve closure, only consequences. And for the first time in a long time, I slept soundly.